So yeah, so we did miss, students did miss quite a bit of lesson time, which didn't go down too well. We didn't really plan for progression. We didn't really look at things like before and after evaluations. We just sort of went, let's do all of this because it's all great stuff, which it was. But we didn't really look at it in a smart way, if you will. So we didn't look at that smart. Was it measurable? Was it always relevant? Was it more of a tick boxing exercise? So I think when lockdown was our friend in this sense, when we first had the first lockdown, I think me and Sarah must have spent probably more hours on Teams than was a full-time work, just talking about careers and what we wanted to do and how we were going to do it. So, as it says on there, we stripped the program right back to basics. So we literally sat and discussed what we wanted it to do. Excuse me, what we wanted it to look like, and what steps we'd take. So we looked at what the requirements are for each student. We knew about the benchmarks and how important they are. And if we do meet all the benchmarks, then obviously we're doing something right. But what we didn't want to do is just go, right, the benchmarks, that's all we need to meet. That's it, done and dusted. We wanted it to be specific for our school, for our students. And I know, obviously, all schools are different. All students are different. So it wasn't just a sole, let's get the benchmarks met and let's box it off. It was, what can we do? We looked at our current plan. So we did have a plan in place previously, took out the things that we thought were really effective, that we wanted to stay, that had an impact on our students and fit in where we wanted them to. So, for example, Careers Week, etc., and things like that. And then we looked at things like the one-to-one interviews and are they in the right place? And is this assembly that we do with year 10s, is it suitable? Could it be in year 9? Is it more appropriate to be in year 11? So that was quite a nice task to sit down, and like I said, lockdown was our friend. We did have the time to do it, albeit sat outside in the sun, but on Teams. It did help us do that, not having the stress of everyday life, I suppose, to sort of hinder that progression. Then I suppose you're probably all members of like the Facebook groups and things like that. We kept seeing this roadmap and everyone was going mad for roadmaps. Where do you start? Where do you end? So I have attached on, might be the next slide actually. So yeah, so I can send this out so you can see ours, and I'll send the PowerPoint as well. So I started looking at what we offer our students from the moment they come in to when they leave. And it was a really nice experience. It took a while to get that roadmap in there with all the lines. It was a nightmare, but it was really nice looking at and bullet pointing what we do for our students, sort of away from the academic side. So we're really passionate at Ashton about developing our students anyway, and all the charity events, all that type of stuff that we do in each different year group. It was really nice to sit down and go, right, what do they do when they first come in? What are the experiences that they get? So, for example, the road show, we always do that every year, where we do our one-to-one career interviews, where they do, where they do student leadership and where they sign up to be head boy, head girl. So it was quite a nice experience. And then what I decided was there was actually too much stuff to put in there. Things like our form time curriculum, the PSHE stuff. So I just put at the top events that all students do, so like Careers Week, etc. Because otherwise, what I started doing was duplicating Careers Week in all the different year groups. So it just made sense to have a list at the top that showed what all students do in every year group. But yeah, like I said, I will send that out so you can have a look at it. And it is a good experience to sit down and have a look. So yeah, I copied the template and then tweaked it to meet our needs. Okay, so thinking about our objectives, and me and Sarah sat together and thought, right, what do we want to do? How do they match our school objectives and our outcomes? What is the purpose of careers at Ashton? What do we want them to be able to do, or when they enter further or higher education or apprenticeship or the world of work? Have we created these well-rounded individuals that have aspirations and they can hold their own really out there in the wider world and not be babied by us, I suppose, in secondary school? So we put our bullet points together. We looked at, like I said, looked at other school documentation and we dragged them across and had a look. But again, like I said, I can send these out to you. But I suppose the main one that our school, and especially with our PP students being a really hard engaged boys and PP students, it was to raise the aspirations. I think that's first and foremost of what we want to do at Ashton. Let them know there's a life outside this local area and that they can achieve. So what were our barriers, and then what did we do to obviously sort try to combat those, knock down those barriers. So student awareness of skills, what we found is every year our students go to do their CV, their applications for college, applications for student leadership, and their awareness of skills. They did not know what skills they had. Even though they use them every day, they had no idea. If you know, it's completely different, I'm hoping. But what we invested in the Skills Builder programme. So it was quite nice to sit with staff. We introduced a reward on so we have like a Smileys and Grumpies like merit and demerit system. So we built into our merit system that there is a reward for employability skills, just to raise the profile around school to start with. And then luckily I'm in charge of form time as well. So we have, at the moment, due to COVID, we have a form time session in the morning for 20 minutes and 15 minutes in the afternoon. So it's quite good because I oversee that. It's easy for me to obviously take over a little bit of that for careers. So we are lucky. But form time for us, we have specific weeks of Skills Builder. So instead of having just a 20-minute session on it, where in 20 minutes, by the time you've done the register, you've checked equipment, it was game over. We have a full week now where all students in school, so for example, the first one back in September is aiming high. And then all students for that whole week, they have their Skills Builder passport, they write down, they do tasks with their form teacher on the skills, and then there's their own passport of when they perform that skill or when they've done it inside or outside school. And then obviously 4 weeks later, there'll be the other skill and so on and so forth. That's really good. And the idea with that is there's no Skills Builder sellers on here, I hope. We sort of tweaked it. We didn't have where you rate your class online. We sort of moved away from that and tweaked it to do what we wanted it to do. So we're in control of what skills students do and when, and what level of that skill they do in each year. So it shows the progression, rather than saying to our form teachers, there's your Skills Builder profile, off you go. I'm sure you know, some form teachers are great and would follow it to the T. Other form teachers go, yeah, I've completed it. We're all level 15 on problem solving. So it allows us to basically track what year groups are doing, what skill to what level in each year, and then obviously we can show that progression. Students' low literacy levels. So again, I think this is highlighted even more now with the lockdown. So again, breaking out those key terms, those key terminology. Again, we have another slot in our form time provision for literacy skills. Some students don't interact easily with adults, unknown to them. Okay, again, I'm sure they all go nervous and shy, and then you think, God, you can't shut you up in my lesson, and someone else comes on to speak to them, and then they don't get any questions, they're all silent, even though they know they do have questions. So it's again getting them to practice that. So we obviously we did have planned a interactive interview set up for our year 11 students that had over 30 STEM ambassadors there, or signed up to deliver like a virtual interview. So we wanted to get them out of their comfort zone, really. Instead of them going, oh, we're going to do a mock interview, it's going to be me interviewing you, someone completely different they never met before. Try and get it as real as possible. Again, student aspirations are really low. Like it says, 50% PP students. Students don't know LMI information. So again, that was really important. They don't often think about the local area and what's out there, what jobs are big in Preston or Lancashire. A lot of it comes from I'm going to go down this career and that's it, even though they've not thought about the actual process or the ability to go out and get that job. So again, once a week now in form time, we do a drop down of LMI information, quick 20 minutes, and that ranges from using some of the snippets from the LMI booklet. I think it's on the Preston College website. It might be looking at a spotlight on certain careers. So this week I did interviews with my friends, which sounds a bit weird, and it was weird to do actually, but I interviewed loads of my friends, 20 minutes tops, about their job, linked to what skills they'd use in their day-to-day job, and I've tried to ask my friends who have exotic jobs like a doctor and nurse and bank manager, etc. And they've watched one this week, so it was really nice. Year sevens popped into this. I've seen your interview, and I was like, "What interview?" And then I remembered what it was, and they were like, "Yeah, with the doctor." And I was like, "Oh, was it good?" And they were like, "Yeah, it's really good." So that sort of being drip fed into form time is having a nice impact. Our student leadership program again offers an unbelievable opportunity for our students to take up roles in the school. and the whole application process is tailored around them applying themselves online, and then they get feedback from their application. But again, I've got a slide on that just to show you about that. Students not recording their own career interactions, I think that's a big one for us, and that's one that we've just started to sort of change. We had the old record of achievements, like a paper one, and again, when students got to year 10, 11, let's have a look at writing CVs and applying for college, they literally will go, nothing to write, not done anything, even though they've all done charity events, they've done one the last couple of weeks, they've all volunteered, they've done so much stuff that they just don't recall it. They've had the one-to-one interviews, all this type of stuff. So what we just purchased is a start profile. I know some of you probably know what it is, but just for that interactive locker, I think that'll be game changing for us, that students can upload to their own virtual locker, and we can also input information into their locker as well. So by the time they get to year 10, they should have a whole raft of information or documents that they've carried out or they've done, and it just helps them, gives them a bit of a boost and a reminder, yes, I have actually done so many of these events. So fingers crossed. We've just started to input the data for different year groups. We started with current year 8s because they're having one-to-one interviews at the moment. So Jackie will be writing those up or filling them in a Microsoft form and then dropping that into their locker, so all year 8s will have that. And then we've also just opened it up to our year 10s. So when they do work experience, the first thing they can put in there is their diary, if you will, of what they've done in work experience. And that, I suppose, that leads on to one-to-one interviews. We did in previous years just have it in year 10. But what we found is by the time they got to year 10, they'd already picked their options. They were a bit apprehensive about telling Jackie what they wanted to do. And it was a bit like, oh, well, why am I speaking to you? You're like, I've not really met you properly. And it was a bit odd. So what we decided to do is take some of the workload off Jackie to allow her to then do one-to-one interviews with year 8 as well. So that breaks down that barrier of they know who Jackie is earlier on in Key Stage 3. Jackie obviously records their one-to-one interview, their notes, what they're interested in, can provide a follow-up interview if they want, but also then when they get to year 10, they know who Jackie is, they know in year 9 that they might want to go and talk to her. So that's working really well with us at the moment. Okay, so our new programme then, obviously we want to start embedding the skills straight away from year 7. That's why we've obviously put the skills builder stuff in there. It's a robust programme that allows them to, so our student leadership, if I click on here, I'm hoping it's going to take us to our page. It's probably easy to show you on here. Fingers crossed. All right, can you still see my screen, or is it still the PowerPoint?
You can still see the PowerPoint, John.
Let's have a look. There we go. What about now?
Yeah, that's your website.
Okay, yeah, so basically what we found with our student leadership is, in previous years, it was just year 11s. They did a door duty, and to be honest, when I was on duty, they were more of a hindrance than a help. They'd be stood there eating the dinner, they'd be messing around a little bit. All the right intentions, that they're there every dinner and someone would go around and check they were all at the hot spots around school. Great. Their applications, however, were like a little scrap piece of paper. There you go. Can I be a head boy? Can I be student leader, etc.? And the answer would always be yes. What we decided to do again, when me and Sarah put our heads together, was thinking, what skills are they getting from that? They're not getting anything. So what we decided was, let's first of all look at the applications. How can they apply that's meaningful? It's experience for them, and obviously we can see and record all their interviews, their applications, to give them feedback. So what we decided to do is, on our school website, we have obviously the staff vacancy page for jobs up and coming. So we decided, well, why not have a student vacancy page? So that sounds silly now, head boy, head girl, but what we decided was, let's set out a student leader vacancy page. So what I first of all asked was, middle leaders, all staff really, do you have any student leader roles that you need filled? Now, obviously, this was pre-COVID, so we planned all this out, and obviously we couldn't do it to the degree that we wanted to. So obviously we got loads of feedback: homework support, smiley store assistant, computer. So every faculty really had someone for something. Sports leaders, Duke of Edinburgh Award, IT technician support, so they'd shadow the IT technicians after school or in the lunchtime. So we had really, really good feedback from the rest of the staff. And what we decided to do is go, right, okay, which one's suitable for who? And then, like I said, in previous years, it was just year 11 that would be a student leader. So it got us thinking, well, let's strip it back. Let's allow everyone to be a student leader for specific roles. And then we'd have a senior student leader. So our current year 11s are senior student leaders. They're at the top of the food chain. And then we still have roles that are suitable for all year groups. So year 7 up to year 10, with the idea that each job has a job description. So we ask staff to create, I give them a template with a skills builder skills as well, and they wrote a brief job description about what they'd ask and what they'd want their student leaders to do. So obviously these are all available on our website to our students, and then what we wanted their application. Before it was a little scrappy piece of paper. This time, when they click apply, it was a Microsoft form. Fingers crossed. Yeah. Okay. So then, obviously, they put the name in the form group, what position they're applying for, and obviously they paste their cover letter or why they're suitable for that role. And once they submit, the idea was that we would see it. The person in charge of that role would see it. So the member of staff, I don't know, the IT technicians, head of the IT technicians would see the role, who's applied, and also Jackie, our careers advisor. So then she could look at it and go, right, okay, this is the feedback for your application. It was good, however, check your spelling mistakes. And what we made Jackie was a template that was a bit like a tick or cross exercise. So it was dead quick feedback. This is what you need to work on your next one, etc., and send that straight back to the students. So it worked. The idea was, it was great. We got over 170 applications from our students, and that was during lockdown. So we actually sent out a little pack to all the students with all the roles in a little booklet, the link and a letter to parents to say, obviously help promote this, and put it on our social media pages. And we got 170 students applying for these roles, which is great. However, when COVID struck, obviously we couldn't support every single role, just because obviously COVID, trying to be COVID safe, but we do have a lot of students up and running in these roles at the moment. So I'm just thinking, there's a young lady in year 10 who's our IT technician support, and she's up there now, basically going around checking all the computers are working, there's no missing keys, so that she's working with members of staff that she would never normally work with. She gains up that experience throughout the rest of the year. Just mention as well, when I recently had a deep dive by an Ofsted inspector, and when I spoke about this, she absolutely loved it. She loved the whole experience of students can apply. It's online. There's the job descriptions. There's the feedback from Jackie, and the fact that they can apply. So I missed out the key part. At the end of each year, they can reapply for a different job. So the idea is that our year 7s might go, right, okay, yes, I want to be a librarian. And then year 8, I want to be a sports leader. Year 9, I want to be work for the Ashton Cafe, and so on and so forth. But by the time they get to year 11 and they're leaving, they might have had 3, 4, 5 different job roles around school to add to their virtual locker and their portfolio of applying for college. And she absolutely loved it. So just, it might be worth telling whoever's in charge. It's something that, speaking from experience, that she was big on that. She really did like that. If I go back, hopefully you can see. Let's have a look. Am I back? Hoping I'm back. Yeah, perfect. Again, just missed a little bit at the bottom. So Jackie obviously gives feedback, the roles across all year groups, and then the training. So at the moment, what we're trying to do is, in a COVID safe way, is look at the groups of students and offer employer engagement. So for example, I know the IT team obviously support those students, but we've got some students now who are our form captains, who obviously have to speak to their form and delegate. They have to obviously stand up and hold meetings, and obviously it is pretty daunting doing it to your friends and do it to people in your year group, and then they have to feedback at our student council. So we've offered training, and what we've got is a local company, it's Costain, who are building the flyover bridge in Preston. We got in contact with them to see if they would help support it. So now at the moment, they're up there now actually. Our form captains are having virtual meeting with different staff members each week from Costain, who we've asked them to focus on different skills. So for example, the one I think last week was problem solving, this one's confidence, and it's just obviously they're talking about their role at Costain, so they're getting that experience, but also the fact that why it's important for these skills and how they can use it in their role as a form captain or going forward. So again, it's really important to be reaching out to people. Again, lots of people do want to get involved. And then, yeah, our student council, this year more than ever, I think it's been set up and it's more robust. It allows our form captains to voice their opinion to our head boy and our head girl. And what's good for them is they're overseeing it now. So before it was very much staff led, where this time we've prepped the head boy and head girl and they've had training as well, where they can obviously sit down and hold the meeting, take the minutes, and then they feedback. So it's going full circle, and I think that's what the Ofsted inspector really, really liked. Okay, so I can do a breakout room, but I don't know how many of us are in there.
Yeah, Josh, there's not many expected. We have had a few apologies today, unfortunately, like I said, with the COVID situation.
No problem. Has anyone got any questions, I suppose, or
yeah, I've got one which seems to be quite a common question. With yourself and Sarah obviously being within senior leadership team, do you think that's helped with the buy-in from the wider staff? Because that's a question we get asked quite regular in terms of the curriculum areas buying into it.
Yeah, I do think so. If you'd asked me previous, I'd probably thought, I think it depends what school as well. So I think our school is quite accepting of new ideas. And I do think if you go to the middle leaders or the wider staff, a lot of staff will get involved because that's what we are like as a school. We work for each other, I suppose. But yeah, no doubt being on SLT allows you that extra foot in terms of not so much of you're doing this, but the things like I'm in charge of form time. So basically that allows me to have that add-on. It allows me to have more leader management time to go and chase up things with meetings with Jackie and stuff like that. But I do definitely think you agree, Sarah.
Yeah, and I think the fact that we stripped stuff back because we were taking students out of curriculum time, so our careers advisor was spending time and the links and the engagement that she had with students was chasing for reply slips for them to go to events without her actually having those proper conversations. And you never had a lesson where you had everybody in your class. So when we put the spin on it, that actually what we've done is we've completely stripped it back. What we want is careers to be integral to what's actually happening in school. So the student leadership program, a lot of those roles actually works as work experience because they're getting employer engagement from outside. They're then practicing their skills, they're improving on it, and then they're meeting with the employers back after that. So there's lots of things that happen as a result of our lockdown. Our lockdown challenge when we've tried to pull all of this together. That's what we were really doing. What do we already do in school, not just in careers but across the board, that will then mean that there's more curriculum time and students aren't going to be out as much. So we got massive buy-in for that. And I think because the careers champions are also so keen, the different things and events that we did want to push that were whole school, they're really committed to pushing those. So it's not really a job that we've had to say, well, have you done that? Have you done that? Have you done that? It was really them coming forward to do that. So I think
it's like boxing clever, really, I think, as well. And like Sarah just said, a lot of the things we do, like the student leadership, the employer engagement, the costing thing upstairs, we can map them across to the Gatsby benchmarks rather than it being in previous years, we need to make sure we're doing this, we need to get these students to this. A lot of it, like Sarah just said, instead of taking them out a lesson to do X, Y, and Z, we want careers champions to make sure it's embedded into the curriculum so it's part of their schemes of work. So not coming out, they're staying in there. They might do 20 minutes at the end of each topic about careers in that area or whatever it is, watching careers videos linked to that. I do think, like you said, going back to your question, it definitely does help being on SLT.
Yes, kind of flipped it, haven't you? So do them themes I'm taking it get discussed in terms of the school improvement plan? How does that come into it?
So these form part of our school improvement plan. So in terms of our literacy, that was a complete drive forwards. Well, how are we supporting that? So our form time is built around improving our literacy, but actually incorporating and our cultural capital. But actually what Josh has done in form time is our cultural capital activity that's related to the news or whatever has a career slant on it. So it was very much pulling what we want to do as a school moving forwards and making everything a bit more time efficient and pulling everything together. So I have sat previously and spoke to the deputy head and said, we need these people to go out to do this for careers. not a chance. Now we're actually having more time out of lesson probably for the likes of one-to-one interviews, where we're asking 2 year groups out at a time rather than just one, and there's no problem and there's no issue with that, because so much of what we're doing is helping to support the school improvement plans, and there's less curriculum time all of the time being done. It's at this time, and this is the reason why. That will then support the options process, so that we won't have many students changing options or wanting to. Therefore, that's not going to bring work for timetabling and so on. So I think it's really been the knitting of everything together of priorities and us. It's been a bit of a marketing sale, hasn't it? Really, of do it like, if you do it like we want you to do it, and that's not. I think it is crucial that we're an SLT, in that we've got the platform to provide this is what we're doing and why, but we still had to have the rationale of, this is what we're doing and we want to do it this way, because here's the benefits for everybody sitting around the table and how it's going to help. And it was that sale and the way in which we sold it, I think.
Yeah, I think we are a big force to be reckoned with as well there. So, but yeah, it is great, and I do think we've had a really good impact. And I suppose, like we said, trying to raise that aspiration. So it's a bit like a domino effect. So one example of it is behaviour. If the poor behaviour they end up in FTEC, which are like fixed term exclusion centre, and what we decided was, instead of waiting for students to get into there, and they've been in there numerous times, the same calibre of student, we send Jackie over to give them a one-to-one interview, an additional one. So no matter what year group they're in, if they've been in there 3 times, they've crossed the threshold, Jackie will then have an additional one-to-one meeting with them, just to trying to raise that aspiration of, come on, you know what you need to do. Your behaviour's not acceptable, and having that other career slant on it, rather than it going from teachers selling you off, you've not done this. Jackie's completely a different entity in school, so it's not a case of, oh God, I'm going to hear this again from Mr. Murray or Miss Connon. It's someone completely different, unbiased about behaviour, and she links it to the real world. What would you do if you wanted to work in, I don't know, in the police, and you've done this? And I think she sort of registers that with them earlier on. So it's good.
Yes,
I think I think in terms of it is infiltrated into everything. So like Josh said, in terms of behaviour, there's that strand. Well, what about the SEND students? Well, Jackie actually attends the review meetings, so that actually careers is part of our support network to help our students succeed and get to the end of year 11. So therefore it's seen as important and it's seen as vital, and it's not, okay, well, we're doing all of this to support our students in lots of different ways, pastorally, whichever way, academically and curriculum, plus here's the careers add-on. Careers is part of personal development, and personal development is throughout school, not a separate entity.
I think one of the big sells for me when I got into SLT was that careers is not, and I was guilty of this, it's not a bolt-on that's just there. It has to come from everyone. It's not a case of Jackie's in charge. Jackie's the careers woman at one point, and that was it. It has to come from everyone. And I think that's where the careers champions, etc., have really helped spread the importance of careers.
Yeah, that's brilliant, because that's obviously when we're talking to careers leads, and a few of mine are on today, so it is very much one person can't do it all, and it's getting that school or wider buy-in, isn't it? So that's really good. Thanks very much. Like I say, I think the change in the format today, with due to attendance, will kind of change things around a little bit. But has any of the schools or any of my colleagues got any questions for Josh and Sarah before we hand over to Andy? No? Andy's got a question.
Yeah, I just wondered, excuse me, you might have already touched on it, Josh, but I just wondered if by putting the roles for, you had those sort of, instead of them being a piece of paper, you have a conversation in the corridor, you put them online and you make it into a job application more. Yeah. So did you get more validity and more buy-in and more sort of, they took it more seriously and they thought it was actually a proper thing? Because it's like a trial run for when they're applying for jobs, isn't it? So
yeah, definitely. I think that was our main aim, trying to make it as realistic as possible, because you don't get a job now by just scribbling on a piece of paper, I want this job and this is it. I think we wanted that experience of them actually go away, write your cover letter, have the job description, and I think they felt it was a lot more serious. Yeah. And the good thing is, because we moved it just in year 11s, we did have some, obviously, year 7s and 8s applications that were like 2 lines or whatever, but that allowed Jackie then to go, listen, great, I'm glad you applied. obviously some of they did get the post. We very rarely said no, which I suppose again you have to balance with it, the real world. Like if the application's not great, we do want to say no at times, but it's a case of them understanding that right, there's your feedback. Next time when you apply for a new role, make sure you're looking at Jackie's feedback. But yeah, without a doubt, we've had miles more applications than we have, like 170 applications.
And we want it to be more robust. So we've got student leaders that are in year 11 or prefects or whatever you call them, no matter what school that you're at, who have got it in name, and you think, well, what do you do? So actually what we wanted with our student leadership roles was there was a bit of accountability for them, so that was tracked. So are they turning up to the training? If they're not, and they're not fulfilling their role, you've got 3 strikes and that's it. It's removed off you. This isn't something that we'll just give away willy-nilly. You need to step up to the mark, because that's what you'd be expected to do in the real world. And we have had senior student leaders that it's been taken off. It's been used by progress leaders to say, if you're not behaving in a certain way, that role does not fit you, and that'll be removed. And for some it's worked, and they've knuckled down and they've got on. For others, maybe not so much. But what we've done with the numbers and the students that we've got is we've then looked at it behind the scenes and said, right, let's look at our student leaders. How many are in each year group? What are the PP versus non-PP? What are the boys, the girls, SEND, EAL? And then part of it is that the person who's in charge of student leadership then looks and sees, well, actually, there's not very many PP in that year group. Let me go and speak to a number of those students in that year group and say, what are you interested in? What possibilities could we have? And then we add those on. So the vacancies that are there at the start of the year, and there'll be ones that will be there the whole time, but there'll be other opportunities that come up, or there'll be other things that will engage students in to say, right, well, you'd be interested in that, right, come on, let's do that, and let's sort that and move forward. And the other thing I'd just like to say is that although I'm sitting here as the line manager for Josh, but I'm also the Science Learning Partnership, and part of my role is, yes, to provide CPD for teachers, but my partner is the STEM Ambassador Hub, which is STEM First. And Josh spoke earlier on about us saying we want, in COVID, we want to do our year 11 mock interviews. We want them still to happen. And they said, all right, who are we going to get? Well, let's not put on a post for STEM ambassadors. And we're never going to get that many. We need 30 to get them all through in that time frame, which maybe we're not going to get 30. We are going to get 30. Let's get the invite up and let's get it on. And further in Josh's PowerPoint, we've got the invite and we got 30. Yes, we got perhaps 5 or 6 from our governors and people that we knew that we pulled in, but STEM ambassadors actually responded to that. And I think lockdown and the changes is actually now our friend in terms of schools, because they can pop in and pop out remotely, which was much easier than it was before. And if you now go on to stem.org.uk on your dashboard, there used to be, right, well, there's the activity that you can go on and ask for a STEM ambassador, but there's also a link underneath it, which is called offers. And when I went on last night or the night before and put in the address of my, the postcode of my school, and put within a 20-mile radius, anybody that can offer me something that is online, there were 133 opportunities. So that ranged from people in Victrix to Who Am I? So the STEM ambassador giving a little bit of an overview, like Josh's video, saying who am I and what do I do and how would that relate. So those are there for schools to use, and you can directly message from that offer direct to those STEM ambassadors. So I would say that I know that, you know, as years have gone on and the systems have changed, and sometimes it is difficult, but it's about a time period, and it's about stopping and planning for the rest of the academic year or the year after, and saying, right, well, that's the needs of this year group, that's their interests, these are the sorts of things that I need to put in place. I'm going to put on the adverts now, or I'm going to look at those offers. What is there? Oh, that catches my eye. That's something really interesting. I want to pick that person. I want to get them booked in advance. Because the offers are there as a good starting point before you decide, well, this is what I want my activity to look like. But when Josh sends you out the PowerPoint, then I'll have the link for you to go on, and I'll show you the pathway. Well. Yeah, you can see the advert.
I think
oh, sorry, Josh, go on.
Sorry, I've just said, just as what Sarah said, one of the things we did do is move our careers week. So our careers week, we used to have it in the National Careers Week, and for us as a school, it didn't. We got feedback from our teaching staff saying, "Oh, I wish we'd have done National Careers Week before they chose their options." So last year or the year before, we decided, right, okay, let's change it. Let's move it to before the options, so year 9s can actually have all the Careers Week and input before they chose their options, and it worked so much better. So I suppose it's about knowing the needs of your school, but also, like Sarah just said, having virtual contact with people now is so much better. So again, on my PowerPoint, there's a slide towards the end that just has a brief overview of like what all the different subjects did, and lots of it is literally just Q&As. So live lesson, Q&A, they recorded it, so they've got that for future reference. With there's one in English that was an author in a local press and things like that. So I think careers beforehand was like, oh, I've got to get someone to come in, it's got to be dead laborious and tedious, and it's going to be only one class can see it. Where now it's very much like, for us, there's your careers champions, what do you want to do for it? Can we help in terms of get anyone through Sarah to put something on? And there's so many. I was the skeptical one going, we'll never get 30, there's no chance we're getting 30 people. Who's giving up the time to do that? No chance. And to be fair, we literally, the advert's nothing special, and we got well over 30 to start with, and we just whittled it down. Some dropped off, as you'd expect, but no, it was shocked me.
I think that's quite a common thing, isn't it? Especially when you're doing larger events, it's whether you get the employers there. But Sarah, can you just briefly go over, do you know with the STEM ambassadors, because I've got a new member of careers on one of my schools, in terms of STEM ambassadors, we know how it works for requesting STEM ambassadors, but can you just explain how it's changed slightly when the offers have been put on for the schools to look at, rather than, if they don't know what to do? Can you just
Josh, do you want to go, if you share your screen?
Do you want to sit here?
And then I can just log into my account.
Right, okay.
Because I know that might make things easier when schools are actually looking at things for planning. Things might naturally be related to what they're doing, mightn't they?
There you go.
All right, so is that,
That's just normal.
that's my, you can see my screen.
Yeah.
So if you just go on to the stem.org.uk website, and then when you sign in, so you register if you haven't, you've got your saves. Josh, I could have just gone on as you, couldn't I? Actually. So on here, when you sign in, you've got your dashboard, and your dashboard basically just talks about your profile and where you're at. On the left-hand side, if you can see, it says activities. So when you click on activities on the left-hand side, that will allow you to advertise an activity. So to put on for the STEM ambassadors, whatever it is that you want. Underneath that, there's now a new additional tab, which is called offers. So if you click down on offers and browse offers, you can then go in. So that's within a 20-mile distance of our school. And then if you click in for whatever year group it is that you're looking for, you can do it so that it's for students, or whether it's for parents, carers, if that's what you're looking to do, the area of expertise, and that goes the whole way down. So if I took what one did I saw one last night, so I really like the idea of that. There's about 7 pages worth of information there, and different things that they can do. So if I move on to say, let's further on, this is me, I'm a STEM ambassador. So all of those are all about that person. So they'll say, and that's the worst example to choose, because they haven't actually told you what actually is there. So that was the same one I've just clicked on. But when you go in, there's lots of so some of them are STEM, some of them are not STEM orientated. So they're talking about, there was one that I really did like the look of, because it did say on it how to get people interested into the STEM industry that didn't have an interest in STEM, so it was looking at the HR side and so on. So it was giving them a bit of an idea of, just because it's BAE doesn't mean to say that you're going there because you want to be an engineer. You're going there and you can still do the role that you would do somewhere else. So if I look at Amaze Labs, then that will come up, that will tell you about the age range. You'll have your owner there, it'll tell you what it's like, the aim, a little bit of a description of what it is, and then you can type your message in, express an interest, and that will go straight to the STEM ambassador who's offering that offer, and then they will get in contact with you back through your dashboard. So you'll come up and there'll be a message there so that you can communicate to get that offer sorted.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Sarah. Because like I said, there is a mixture today of, well, not old schools, but people that's been in the hub a while and some new staff, so that's really good. And is that all right, Sarah?
Yes, that's brilliant, Bob.
Thanks very much for that input. And if I hand over to Andy now, who's waited very patiently. Thanks, Andy. Is that okay? No, it's been brilliant, Sarah and Josh. It's been really useful today. Thank you.
No problem.
I'm not sure how I'm going to top that, to be honest, but I'll give it a go. Right, so first off, this is the first time I've ever tried to share anything on Zoom, so let's just give it a shot and see what happens. If I share a PowerPoint, I can't work out how to make it presenter view now and then not completely kill my screen. So let me just see what happens. Okay, how are we doing with that? Does that look okay?
Yeah, that looks fine.
Well, we can see it as presenter view, Andy.
Can you?
Yeah, we can see your version of it.
Because it's just filling my screen completely. So.
Ah, right. Okay, we've got the version you perhaps want to see. If you click on play from start, and then perhaps you can. Are you sharing your desktop or?
I'm trying to share the PowerPoint slide.
Yeah. Okay. Click on play from start. See what happens then. No, it's still the same.
Whatever. We'll work on it. We'll work on it. Doesn't matter.
It's still legible and we can see it. No problem.
Right. Okay. So what my name's Andy Clark from UCLan. I'm a senior lecturer, enterprise and entrepreneurship. I'm coming at this slightly differently in that I only teach masters and above. So I was Googling acronyms as you were talking there, Josh, because I haven't been anywhere near a school since 1984, so I'm a little bit sort of out of date in that respect. I wanted to have a discussion really today. I thought today would be a discussion, so that's how I've written this. So if that doesn't work or it does work, whatever, we'll just go through it and we'll work it out. I wanted to really talk about what you thought an entrepreneur is, and then to discuss that and say and put my view of what I see an entrepreneur or entrepreneurial actions are. So I really wanted to think about, what do you see as being enterprising and entrepreneurial, and then what does that mean in the context of a school and in terms of education, careers, leaders, in terms of how you are engaging with the students, and what that really means. So if anybody has any comments or questions as we're going through, just shout or raise or whatever you do on Zoom. We only teach on Teams, so apologies, but it's new on Zoom. So if we go into this, right, if we look at enterprise or entrepreneurship, if we go down to the base root of that and we look at that from the definition, the Oxford English Dictionary looks at it as somebody who undertakes a commercial venture. And the reason why I want to talk about start at this point is that I want to think about what we appreciate an entrepreneur to be, right? So if we take the root word from the French, it means to undertake. So the dictionary is talking about a value or a commercial value. If we take it from the root word, we're just making something or we're making a change. So then really, I would view an entrepreneur who's someone who disturbs the status quo, just tries to make things happen a bit and alters stuff. Quality Assurance Agency would define enterprise as generating and applying stuff, and entrepreneurship as a bunch of behaviors and attributes that then lead to creation of value. right? So if we look at that, then we're removing that context of money out of that, and we're just saying, okay, well, we've got values and behaviours, and how does that sit in a context of the people that we're talking about? So my personal view, and I would stress that in the theory of enterprise and entrepreneurship, it's really early days. We're talking 20 years maybe old completely of the concept of what enterprise and entrepreneurship is. So people have different views and different points, and my personal point of view is enterprise would make you more valuable to the company you work for or you're going to work for, and entrepreneurship would make you more valuable to the company that you own. And so the crux of that for me is this conversation about value. So it's not necessarily commercial value. It could be value in any different context. So the question would be that I would pose, if you like, is, do you feel that you are an entrepreneur? Do you feel that you can be entrepreneurial? And okay, it may not take a few minutes now, I don't mean that, but do you feel as, and I'd be interested to see as educators, if you feel that you are an entrepreneur or not. And maybe that's for a conversation another time, later, whatever. But how do you feel about that? You know, and in your position as, in your roles, in your various roles, do you feel that you are an entrepreneur or not? And what do you value that? How do you value that entrepreneur? What do you see that those skills and attributes to be? So if we look at the theory, right, the theory says opportunities come from imperfections in the market. And that's just a kind of nice way of saying something isn't right, so let's fix it, right? So do you make it better, cheaper, more efficient, whatever? And so those entrepreneurial opportunities, they come from actions of the entrepreneur. So what's that person doing, but also consumer driven. And we can see very clearly at the moment with COVID, the entrepreneurial opportunities around Zoom, Teams, all those sorts of things are definitely consumer driven. So I believe that we're looking at personality traits in how people identify those opportunities. So it's a personality trait in how that person is viewed as, or views himself as, an entrepreneur or enterprising. So today, this bit now is really to think about the orientation of that person. What are they like? What are those personality traits? What is human capital, and how do we link into that human capital? And what are those entrepreneurial actions, and what do they look like? And then we, I'd like to have a sort of a think about how does that relate to us in terms of your own personal positions in your own personal work, how you view engagement with the students, how you view your the structures around and how you deliver to the students. So a bunch of words on the screen, loads of words, too many to see. What I want to focus on is the development through the years. So we've got a reference from 1973, then one from 1982, then 1996, and then 2010. And I want to pick out some words in that. So in the 70s, we looked at dramatic leaps forward, and just think about the adjectives that we're using here and how we're defining what an entrepreneur is. So 70s, it's a dramatic leap. 80s, we're innovating boldly. So it's very driven, very strong. In the 90s, we're talking more about behaviors, act autonomously, willingness to innovate. And then as we go in 2010, we're now looking at innovative proactiveness, aggressiveness, risk-taking. So we're moving from an action to an attribute. So we're starting to change our definition. And I think if we look back at how we viewed an entrepreneur 30, 40 years ago, 100 years ago, and how we view them now, we're starting to change that. And we're looking more at it's an attribute in somebody rather than this dramatic leap, this driven identification. So if we reflect on the behaviors, we're currently, just go back to that, we've got proactiveness, innovativeness, competitive aggressiveness, risk-taking, and autonomy as the sort of the standard behaviors that we look at in entrepreneur. I would question risk-taking personally. I think being risk-aware or understanding risk is more accurate than a risk-taker, because I don't believe, necessarily taking risk might not be a good thing. So I would argue risk awareness is more accurate, but we consider these 5 behaviors. What does that mean, right? So the literature will show personality traits of an entrepreneur as somebody who's open to experience, somebody who's conscientious, or they have, I don't mean somebody who is open to experience, somebody who has some traits of being open to experience within them, somebody has some traits of conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. These are seen in entrepreneurs and managers. The literature still continues to note the same sorts of areas in terms of looking at these personal attributes, and we're now thinking about, are these, again, conscientiousness, open to experience, emotional stability, extroversion, risk propensity. So we're now starting to think about, we're narrowing down about what are those attributes of that person more likely to be entrepreneurial or to show entrepreneurial attitudes. It's been structured in what they call the Big 5 personality model. The same sorts of areas are coming up again: openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, neuroticism. Same things are coming up, and we're now saying, okay, what do they mean? So is that person intellectually curious? Are they thorough? Do they like being in part of a team? Do they cooperate? Do they show perhaps degrees of anxiety, tension? So now we're starting to look at what is an entrepreneur, and we can shift away from the business startup guy to maybe somebody who is driven in a different way, in a different scenario, in a different context. They can also be seen as an entrepreneur. So within the education context, how can we draw out these skills, attitudes, behaviors to give people the confidence to be able to lead, to be able to go forward? I think that really maps well with the work with Josh and Sarah to say, okay, you are driving those behaviors with the structure around the jobs board approach, with the structure around how you're engaging with the students. You're driving those, making them think about those questions, I think. So then we link to human capital. So if we look at human capital and we say, what is it, right? So if it's an intangible, if it's related to your accumulated skills and knowledge, and if it's building up that accumulated skills and knowledge, surely having a greater understanding and being able to reflect back and being able to understand your own accumulated skills and knowledge will give you a greater ability to understand your human capital and your value, right? And surely that would be true. So if we are then able to reflect back as educators, and if we are able to engage the students to reflect back on their own autonomy, their own risk-taking, risk awareness, whatever, their own innovativeness, if we're able to ask or empower or engage with the students to reflect back on these, can they then build up their own human capital? And can they then understand that they do have these skills and these abilities, and they do have the ability to be enterprising and driven, and they can understand their accumulated skills? So if we can then, again, ask or empower or engage with the students or within ourselves to say, okay, what about ourselves? What are we open to experience? Are we conscientious? How do we feel about these things? And what does that mean in terms of our skills and experience? If we are supporting somebody to write a job interview, a job application, do they reflect back and say, okay, what are my accumulated skills that I've got that would fit into this? Or do they miss some things off? Sorry. So how do we engage with them to go, okay, how do you feel about these things? And what does that mean in terms of your own position? We have seen, and the literature has seen, that all of these different facets contribute to a successful organization. So if you're working in a business, if you understand your need for achievement, if you understand your human capital, if you understand how driven you are, how conscientious you are, it means, and that's true within a school context, within university, within a business, it's true of all those structures that would engage, that would allow an enhanced firm success. So it would mean that the company does better, so that person has greater value to the business. and that's true in university, in school, in businesses, whatever. It means that if you understand your human capital, you can then engage more with your employer. You can be more valuable to your employer, and therefore, coming back to that value again, you can then add value to that system. What I wanted to then think about at this point is to say, okay, if you thought right in the beginning, yes or no, I'm an entrepreneur, or I can be enterprising, or I do have entrepreneurial behaviors. Do you feel any different now if we then relate back to those the models around conscientiousness, agreeableness, and neuroticism? Do you feel any different about yourself, about whether you could be enterprising and entrepreneurial, or what those words even mean to you, right? And then how would you inspire and empower a student to think about that, and what do those words mean to them? So does this conversation then allow you to explore the definitions of being enterprising and entrepreneurial? I kind of hope it does, and I'm hoping that's an outcome. So if we take, I've got a few examples, because I wanted to try and sort of put forward some points of view. So if a teacher sets up their own business, sets up their own practice, does private work, clearly they start their own business, that's entrepreneurial. And that's traditional, the normal standard traditional approach that we would say about being entrepreneurial. And we could say value's been added to that process. However, and if, for instance, in the same example, an allied healthcare professional, what I wanted to do here, I've put in a couple of different examples, because students will have a multitude of backgrounds, a multitude of dreams and wishes, and therefore, just because they might want to go into one field or another field, I don't believe changes their ability to be enterprising entrepreneur. So if we look at allied healthcare professional, they might be a chiropodist, podiatrist, whatever. They set up as self-employed, they build their own practice. Again, value has been added, it's entrepreneurial. What if that teacher just enhances the learning experience? What if it enhances the students, that teacher enhances the student experience? I would argue value's been added there. So would you suggest that that is being entrepreneurial? I would argue it is. But how do you feel about that? So as an educator, if you are conscientious, if you really want to support the student, if you want to enhance that student engagement, are you being enterprising and entrepreneurial? I would argue, yes, you are. If that allied health professional recognises a change to practice, sorry, my phone went. If that allied health professional recognises a change to practice, do you, and they understand how they may well improve the patient experience, they may well improve accuracy of testing, they may well reduce costs in terms of labour and testing. Are they adding value? They're not starting a new business. They're not necessarily creating any more money. They might be, but they're not starting a new business. But are they being entrepreneurial? I would argue they're adding value. So I would argue, yes, they are. So if a student may say, okay, I want to be a dentist, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a whatever it might be, right? I would still be nurturing their enterprising attributes and behaviours, and I would still say that they're perfectly valid. Again, a scientist, if we take a scientist and we say, okay, you're a great scientist, well done, you're really good. But if they increase their commercial acumen, therefore they increase their funding ability, therefore they increase their success rate, do we just recognize the fact that their science is good? Or do we recognize the fact that they have an entrepreneurial streak in them and their commercial acumen is increased, their human capital is increased? I would argue that yes. So that entrepreneurial actions have increased, the value has increased. I think in these examples, I think autonomy, risk-taking, innovative competitiveness, proactiveness are being displayed. So if we go back to the root definition of enterprise and entrepreneurship, I believe these are being displayed. I believe that openness, experience, being curious, creative, imaginative, working thoroughly, working in a team. I believe all of these are being displayed. So I would argue that all of these actions are enterprising and entrepreneurial. And the question would be, how do you feel? So if we can engage with the cohorts that we do work with, the student body that we work with, if we can ask them to reflect and stand back and think about, if something's not right, how are you going to fix it? What are you going to do to evaluate that experiential learning? Can you add value? Does that contribute to your accumulated human capital? How does that enhance you as a person? What does that mean? And if we can have that discussion, can we then inspire and encourage people to value that enterprising skill, that entrepreneurial action? So really the question is, as we've gone through this, I've rattled through it and apologize for that, but as we go through this, the question would be, has your opinion changed from before I spoke to now? Has it changed through that process? Is there anything that you feel, do you agree, do you disagree? I'm more than comfortable with all of the above. How do you feel? Does it align to what you're trying to do? So open the discussion, really. All I wanted to try and get from today was a discussion around entrepreneurial behaviors, attitudes, attributes, and a thought around reflecting back on ourselves and how do we relate to those. A thought about, does that increase my value to my employer or to the business I own or whatever it might be? And therefore, what does it mean to be enterprising and entrepreneurial? What is that? And am I that? Or can I empower my students to be that, or to consider within themselves, what does that mean to them? Happy to discuss.
That's great.
I don't know how I stop share. There we go.
I think the main purpose, obviously, why we was talking about entrepreneurial, is drawing them skills out, isn't it? Like you say, the change in trends, that what you would have thought was an entrepreneur, 10 years ago is very different now, isn't it? So, yeah.
I wasn't sure when I was asked to come talk to the group. I wasn't sure what was wanted in terms of. So I just kind of. This is what I teach, right? So I thought, well, I'll just go with that. Let's see what happens. And what I wanted to try and do was say, some people might feel that an entrepreneur is a person who starts a business, Richard Branson, whatever, right? Jeff Bezos, all those sorts of people. I don't agree with that. I would argue that Josh, in his actions around understanding the student need, in understanding the engagement with the student, in making a vastly enhanced experience for the student, I would argue that that's extremely entrepreneurial. And that then says, okay, well, how do we then draw the students along that so that they understand that there's an accumulated capital there, right? There's a bunch of skills that they do have that they might not be aware of, and that aligned, that will support them when they want to go get a job. Do you know?
Is there any resources to support the schools with kind of identifying those skills, or?
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe. Like I said, I'm so far out of the school system. Apologies. I only teach masters and up, so I don't know what is around in terms of that. But and also I have to caveat that with this is my opinion. It's such a new field. There's a debate about what is enterprise and entrepreneurship all the time. I just feel it's about that value aspect, and I feel that that's what I try and draw get my students to think about. It's about what have I got within that, and how do I identify that within myself, and what does that mean in terms of my role? I think the work going on with Josh and his colleagues is extremely valuable, and I think it's really, if you don't recognise that and you don't reward yourself for that value, how do you? I'm kind of waffling a bit now, but has that raised any questions, or does anybody disagree, agree, or is there anything in that?
Well, I think it's quite relevant to what obviously Josh was saying about the PP kids, for example, in his schools, and it is, like you say, identifying them. So maybe we can have discussions about resources to support that and how the enterprise advisors can support that as well moving forward. But thanks for your time, because I know we have gone slightly over a little bit with the agenda, but it has been really good content today. And obviously there's been a change with the attendees. We would have hoped for more, but like I said, there's been a lot of apologies with the COVID situation.
Yeah.
Still haunting us, even though we thought it was moving forward, but that's had a big impact. But thanks to Josh and Sarah and Andy, it's been really great input. We're really grateful for you coming. Sarah's just hiding there. Thanks for today. We're really grateful.